The golden chandeliers above Café Del Amor sparkled like stars. But for Emma, they meant nothing more than another exhausting double shift. Her apron was faded, her sneakers uneven, and her back ached from 10 straight hours on her feet. Still, she moved from table to table with a practiced grace, her smile stitched tightly on her lips. Emma wasn't just a waitress. She was a daughter, a caretaker, and someone who had learned to swallow pride with every rude customer she served. Her mother was battling late-stage cancer, and the medical bills were stacking higher than her hourly wage could ever reach. That evening, a man entered with the presence of a king. His name was Damien Cross, billionaire investor, media tycoon, and the kind of man whose face was often seen on Forbes covers. Everyone in the restaurant turned to look. His aura demanded attention. He didn't wait to be seated. He strutted to the center table like it had been reserved for royalty. Emma approached with her usual calm. "Good evening, sir. Can I get you started with something to drink?" Damien didn't look up. He was scrolling on his phone. She waited, patient. Then, without glancing her way, he spoke, his voice loud enough for the surrounding tables to hear. "Do you enjoy this?" he said, "bringing plates to people who make more in a day than you'll ever see in your life?" The air around the table went cold. Emma's smile didn't break, but her heart did a little. She replied gently, "Sir, would you like some water while you decide?" He finally looked up, his eyes sharp, condescending. "Number, I'd like someone who doesn't pretend she's happy in life. You don't have to smile at me. I know fake when I see it." A couple nearby turned their heads, clearly uncomfortable. Emma felt a flush rise in her cheeks, but she didn't let it show. "I'll be back with your menu," she said softly, turning to walk away. He scoffed. "Don't take too long. I have meetings to attend. Important ones." Emma's hands tightened around her notepad, but she said nothing. In the kitchen, the head chef noticed her expression. "You okay?" She nodded. "Yeah, just another table." When she returned, Damien still hadn't touched the glass of water she'd placed earlier. He looked up, still smirking, like he was enjoying the power he held. As she laid the menu down, he leaned in slightly. "You know, women like you, smiling for tips, you weren't made for anything bigger. Life already decided that." And that's when something shifted in her eyes. Her smile didn't fade, but it changed. It was no longer polite. It was something else. She opened her mouth, and what she was about to say next would not just silence Damien, but haunt him for a very long time. Emma stood tall, her fingers gently brushing the menu she had just set down. For a moment, the busy restaurant faded. The clinking cutlery, the soft jazz, the murmured laughter. It all blurred into silence as she looked Damien Cross in the eye. Then she spoke, calmly, clearly. "Sir," she said, "I smile not because I need your tip, but because I refuse to let someone like you take away my dignity." The table behind Damien went silent. A fork dropped, heads turned, his smug grin twitched. Emma continued, her voice steady as glass. "You may have money, sir, power, influence, but clearly you don't have peace. You walked in here with a crown on your head and pain in your heart, and instead of healing it, you humiliate others. That's not wealth, that's weakness." Damien's eyes narrowed. No one had ever spoken to him like that. Not his assistants, not the board, not even his ex-wife, who had once called him emotionally bankrupt. He didn't respond. Couldn't. He just stared, caught off guard by this waitress, this nobody, who somehow saw right through him. Emma didn't wait for his response. She gently placed the notepad on the table and added, "Let me know if you're ready to order. I'll be serving table 7 in the meantime." And just like that, She turned and walked away, not with shame, but with pride that shimmered brighter than the chandeliers above. Damien sat still, his hand frozen near the glass of water. Something inside him stirred. Uncomfortable, unfamiliar. It wasn't anger. It was recognition. For the first time in a very long time, he saw himself, not as the billionaire mogul, but as a man who had forgotten how to be kind, how to feel. He looked around and noticed how others were watching him, not with admiration, but with disappointment. He quickly looked down, pretending to be on his phone again. But his mind wasn't on emails or stocks or power plays. It was replaying her words. That's not wealth. That's weakness. A minute later, the manager approached, concerned. "Mr. Cross, everything all right? I heard there was—" "I'm fine," Damien cut him off. But he wasn't. He suddenly felt small. Emma returned to her routine like nothing happened. She helped an elderly couple pick a dessert, joked with a toddler at table 3, and kept that quiet strength about her, a presence Damien couldn't stop watching. The truth is, Emma reminded him of someone. Someone he had buried in the past, his sister, Ava. Ava had been just like Emma, strong, kind, and brave in ways people didn't notice until it was too late. She had passed away 10 years ago. Damien, too consumed with his growing empire, hadn't even made it to the hospital in time to say goodbye. He buried the guilt. Until now. Watching Emma was like watching Ava live again, fearless, unbothered by titles, rich with something money couldn't buy. Then came the moment that changed everything. As Emma passed Damien's table again, he finally spoke, his voice lower, stripped of arrogance. "Waitress," he said. She paused, turned. He looked at her, but there was no smirk, no insult, just a heavy human expression. "I didn't mean what I said earlier," he muttered. "I had a bad day." Emma tilted her head, unconvinced. "We all have bad days, sir. Doesn't give us permission to make someone else's worse." She started to walk away again, but Damien wasn't ready to let it end there. Not after what he was feeling. He was about to say something honest, when suddenly a man in a suit rushed in through the entrance, clearly looking for him. "Mr. Cross, the legal team's waiting. The merger's falling apart. They need your sign-off ASAP." Damien stood, eyes still locked on Emma. For a moment, he hesitated. The old Damien would have left without another word. But something told him. This wasn't over yet. Not by a long shot. Later that night, after the restaurant had closed and the chairs were stacked on tables, Emma walked out into the cool night air. The city was buzzing as always, but she welcomed the silence between footsteps. She had long learned to leave customers like Damien behind, people who thought their bank accounts gave them the right to insult strangers. But tonight felt different. His eyes. That pause before he left. There was something about it she couldn't shake. She shook her head. No time to waste thinking about him. Rent was due in 4 days. Her younger brother's tuition needed covering, and the hospital bill from her mother's recent surgery had just arrived. She pulled her jacket tighter and began walking to the train station. Across the city, Damien sat in his penthouse office. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire skyline, but he wasn't looking at them. He sat in silence, a glass of untouched scotch beside him. He had signed the merger, closed the deal, made another billion. Yet, all he could think about was a waitress, and what she saw in him. "You walked in here with a crown on your head and pain in your heart." He scoffed to himself. How could a stranger read him so clearly? With a sigh, he reached for his phone and opened a private folder. Inside was a photo, one he rarely looked at. A young girl with long brown hair and the same fire in her eyes Emma had. His sister, Ava. She had passed at 27 from a rare cancer. She used to volunteer at shelters, help neighbors, and lecture Damien when he was arrogant. She had been his moral compass. And when she died, that compass went missing. Until tonight. Emma reminded him that people mattered more than margins. The next day, something unthinkable happened. Emma arrived for her morning shift at the diner. The air felt off, buzzing with something she couldn't place. The manager was already waiting at the door, fidgeting nervously. Before Emma could ask what was going on, the manager handed her an envelope. "This came for you," he said quietly. "Hand-delivered." Emma opened it. Inside was a card, no name on the front. She flipped it open. One line, handwritten in clean script. "You reminded me who I used to be. Let me remind you of who you can become." Below it, a business card. Damien Cross, CEO, and a phone number. Emma blinked, confused, unsure if this was some kind of twisted game. Then she noticed another slip of paper tucked behind the card. It was a receipt from the hospital where her mother had been treated. Paid in full. Emma's hands trembled. Her knees nearly gave out. "What? What is this?" she whispered. The manager stared at her. "I think you made an impression." Still overwhelmed, she rushed to the staff bathroom to breathe. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Why would someone like him, someone who insulted her, do this? Unless he meant what he said before leaving. Unless her words truly reached something inside him. Later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I want to apologize properly. Can I take you to lunch? Not as a waitress, but as someone I respect. No cameras, no games, just a conversation." It was signed. Damien. Emma stared at the message for a long time. Her instincts screamed caution. She had seen powerful men use guilt as a mask before, but another part of her, the part that believed people could still change, whispered something else. What if this is the beginning of something more? She didn't reply. Not yet. Emma didn't respond to Damien's message right away. She sat on the edge of her bed that night, phone in hand, wrestling with a flood of emotions, confusion, suspicion, hope. She'd been disappointed before. People had said the right things, but never followed through. Still, something about this felt different. His words, the hospital bill. It wasn't just about money. It was about being seen. 3 days passed. Then she replied with one simple line. "Tomorrow. Noon. Café Montrose." It wasn't her usual spot, far from the diner or anything remotely connected to her daily life. If he truly wanted a conversation, he'd show up. And if he didn't, well, that would say enough. The next day, she arrived early. She chose a quiet corner table facing the door, ordered black coffee, and waited. Her heart pounded like it hadn't in years. At exactly noon, Damien walked in. No suit, no assistant, no swagger, just jeans, a button-down, and a man who looked like he'd barely slept. He spotted her and walked over cautiously. "Emma," he said softly, as if afraid his voice might scare her off. "Thank you for coming." She nodded, keeping her arms folded. "You wanted to talk. So talk." Damien sat across from her and took a deep breath. "The night I walked into that diner, I wasn't just looking for food. I was angry at the world, at myself. I've spent years chasing numbers, building empires, and somewhere along the way I became someone I couldn't recognize. You looked at me, a stranger, and still saw something good. That terrified me." Emma didn't interrupt. She just listened. "I lost my sister a few years ago," he continued. "She was like you. Fierce, honest, kind, the only one who ever held me accountable. And when she passed, I buried my grief under work and money. I stopped seeing people. Until you." His voice cracked for the first time, just slightly. "I'm not here to offer you some fairy tale," he said. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know you changed something in me." Emma studied him for a long moment. She could see the raw truth in his eyes. Not a performance, not manipulation. Wounded, human. "You insulted me in front of everyone," she said quietly. "You made me feel small." "I know," he replied, "and I regret it. Deeply." There was silence between them. Then Emma leaned forward. "Words are easy. Actions take guts. You paid my mom's bills, thank you, but what now? What happens after this coffee?" Damien looked down at his hands, then back at her. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Or maybe I try to become a man who deserves the second chance you gave me without even meaning to." Emma smiled faintly. "I wasn't offering you a second chance. I was telling you a truth." He chuckled softly. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Weeks passed. Emma returned to the diner. Life didn't magically change, but something inside her had. And Damien? He began showing up quietly, sometimes for coffee, sometimes just to talk. Never as a billionaire, never with a bodyguard, just as a man trying to do better. One evening, as Emma finished her shift, she found an envelope in her locker. No note, just a document. Inside was an offer, full tuition for culinary school. Paid in full. Emma's eyes welled up. She'd told him once, briefly, about her dream of opening her own restaurant someday. She never imagined he'd remember. She looked around, but Damien was nowhere in sight. Only a small, sticky note on the back of the envelope. Investing in a future that matters. Years later, in a cozy corner of the city, Emma's table opened to rave reviews. The first customers? A group of former waitresses she had hired from underappreciated diners. Empowered, respected, paid fairly. And among the early guests, quietly sipping coffee in the back corner, sat Damien. No cameras, no fanfare, just a man proud of the woman who once saw the truth in him. Not the billionaire, not the arrogance, but the broken man. And in helping him heal, she'd stepped into her own power too, because sometimes it's the smallest voices that leave the deepest impact. And sometimes a waitress's truth is enough to bring a billionaire to his knees.